Thank you all very much for joining us this morning. Let's go ahead and start with roll call, which is 1.2 on our agenda.
Trustee Rose?
I am here.
Trustee Gianoli?
Here.
Trustee Caroselli?
Here.
Trustee Jay?
Present.
That's everybody.
That was fast. Okay, that takes us to 1.4, which is public comment. Do we have any public comment this morning?
I see no public comments.
Okay, great, thank you. So we are up for approval of the minutes for the November 2020 minutes. Does anybody have any changes or concerns, or would somebody like to make a motion?
Richard J. Move to accept the minutes as presented.
Nat, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. That takes us to our items for review and recommendation. We're on 2.1, and the first board memo is 2012-78. Review and recommendations. We're looking for an authorization for the President CEO to execute an agreement with GCR Inc. to upgrade RTAA's property and revenue management system in the amount not to exceed $300,000. And I believe we have a presentation from Art.
Good morning, Chair Rose, Mr. Griffin, committee members. Thank you for this opportunity to present this. My purpose today is to gain your support to execute the agreement as just was read. In summary, this is an upgrade to the existing on-site ABM application to a hosted and an upgraded ABRM application. And this is in support of strategic priorities number 6 and number 8. So to start off, I'd like to start by laying out the plan of the financial system modernization that began in 2019. It's a three-legged stool that supports the staff and business of the RTAA. Phase 1 was HCM's Human Capital Management. It's a Tyler Technologies product. Phase 2 was ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, which is also a Tyler product. And phase 3, which is the presentation today, is on ABRM, the Airport IQ Business and Revenue Management System. So phase 1, the Human Capital Management, began in June of 2019. This streamlined many of the HR functions, including HR administration, payroll, and time and attendance. The first module of HCM that included an employee self-service portal went live in July of 2020. And this employee self-service portal was just used for staff to enroll in annual benefits for the upcoming calendar year very successfully. That replaced several manual processes, leading up to many efficiencies of time savings and accuracy. The time and attendance application went live for CSP and management employees just a few weeks ago on November 23rd. This replaced paper timesheets and other manual data entries that were going into the payroll system, which leads again to greater efficiencies and accuracies. The remaining groups, police, Teamsters, and fire, will be going live in February, April, and June, respectively. Phase 2 of the modernization plan began in February of this year with the ERP system. This is the core financial systems, including GL, AP, capital assets purchasing, and budget preparation. Implementation began in July and with an expected go live on or before the end of the current fiscal year. So these two phases, both are Tyler applications, which makes them highly integrated and leads to an increased efficiencies and strong technical foundation for our financial applications. So this leads to our, our current proposal with the Airport IQ Business Management application. ABM was installed over 12 years ago and has been maintained, but in 2020, this last year, the vendor announced the end of support for updates and security patches. While this application has served us well in the past, we need more modern functionality to allow customers and lessees self-service access from a customer portal for things such as online bill pay and other features. GCR upgraded the current ABM application with ABRM in 2017, just as a perspective. Okay, so phase 3, or the third leg of the stool, is a strong property and revenue management application with those additional financial functionalities, including tenant and property management, administration, lease agreements, and utility billing. In that system, there's over 800 customers and tenants doing approximately 2,500 transactions, which equates to approximately $52 million in annual revenue. Some of the manual processes that are going to be automated are reporting of gross revenue, bill preparation, and cash receipt processing. ABRM Tenant Portal allows tenants and lessees the ability to check on their account status, submit reports, view and pay invoices online, which leads to greater efficiencies. ABRM also includes integration with our GIS system, which improves visibility of lease space in a geographic aspect. So late in 2019 and early 2020, needs analysis and evaluation were done. Stakeholders evaluated based upon the ease of use and required features, and ABRM was determined to meet those requirements. Staffs negotiated the best and final offer, which is what's presented here. We're able to sole source procure this upgrade for software in accordance with NRS 332.115 because it is software. An upgrade allows us to build on our initial investment without having to incur startup costs for a second time with a new application. So the ABRM solution provides a strong third leg that complements the other two legs to create the financial technology foundation for modernization of our financial systems. For the fiscal impact, there's $300,000 were approved in this year's fiscal budget. Here's the list of detailed applications and the cost of including implementation and the first year subscription fees. This is a 3-year agreement, and years 2 and 3 fees are listed here also. So with that, staff recommends the board adopt the following motion. It's hereby moved that the board authorize the president CEO to execute an agreement with GCR Incorporated to upgrade RTA's property and revenue management system in an amount not to exceed $300,000. And that concludes my presentation, and I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Art. Thank you very much for that. I don't have any questions. Do any of the other committee members have any questions?
I just want to make a comment. It sounds like the whole implementation of all these pieces have gone relatively smoothly for this, which is impressive.
I was going to say the same thing. I mean, it looks great, you know, we needed this, it's looking good. So congratulations. Good job, everybody.
Well, I agree. I think it sounds like it's going to be a great additional tool set. So that's wonderful. Art, do you have anything else you want to say before we take a motion?
Well, thank you for those comments. It's been a great team effort. We have great project managers, great team support, and great senior leadership support. And that's what leads to a good implementation. So thank you for that.
Could not agree more. Does anyone want to make a motion, or are there any other comments or questions?
I'll move to approve.
Richard J. moved to second, or second, not move to second, but second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Art.
Thank you.
Thanks, Art.
Okay, everyone, that will take us to 2.2, 2012-84, adoption and resolution of number 548, amending resolution number 544. Adopting an update to policy number 600-007 on the financial incentives for airline and dedicated cargo carriers, and amending the current budget to add $200,000 in fuel and tax funds for the purpose of expansion and or attraction of air service at the Reno Tahoe Airport. And I believe we are going to have a presentation by Son and Trish.
Thank you. Can you confirm if you can hear me okay and if you can see my full screen presentation?
I can hear you and I can see your screen.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. So as as you mentioned earlier, so we're talking about airline incentives, which is a very important piece of mitigating some of the startup risk for airline partners, especially during these times when they're losing money left and right. A lot of airlines continue to bleed money on a daily basis. I can give you an example. Allegiant's on the bottom of the chart. They're burning about $15 million a day. It started very high, but then again, keep in mind, it's still happening. And one of the reasons is that, or the main reason is because they're not generating enough revenue for the flights that are offering. So some of you have seen this before. So back in 2019, we were on a very good run with 58 consecutive months of passenger growth. And that is about 35% increase when we start from 2014 up until 2019, which was a record year in the recent history with 4.45 million passengers. And if COVID didn't hit us, we were expecting 2020 to be a record year in this decade. So as we know that in April, March and April, we did see passengers decline all the way down to 95% below previous year's levels. There was a day with 212 passengers, which was a very depressing day. And I'm sure, just like me, many of you will remember that too. So since then, since it started, we kind of grew in passenger levels back in summer and then kind of tapered down a bit post Labor Day, but we did not decline at the levels that we thought we were going to. Fast forwarded to November, we thought November was going to be a very poorly performing month for Reno, for passengers. We did not see that. We exceeded our budgeted forecast in July, August, September, October, and we're forecasting November to be higher than what we projected. So now we're in December. And for the very first time last week, for the very first time, I reported that our recovery rate is slower than the national average. Up until now, we were about 14 to 15% points higher in terms of recovery rate than the national average, but that has changed for the first time. For the longest period, we were down year over year about mid-50s. Yesterday, I recorded the first week at 70% year over year reduction, which is not good. So we don't know what December is going to be like. We do know that this current week is it's probably going to be similar to what we experienced last week, but there's still a lot of unknown. When you have CDC guidelines asking you not to travel, those are some of the things. They are affecting travelers' sentiment. So let's keep that in mind. Keep our fingers crossed that the last 2 weeks of December are going to be better than the first two. So if we're able to hit a forecast mark, we will hit the 2 million mark in terms of 2020 calendar year. So up until now, our focus has been on messaging that the airport is clean, traveling is safe. So we've been focusing on retention, which means these are the markets that we're trying to keep, making sure that the essential travelers that have to go places, we provide service to them. And of course, Brian Culpin, rest of the team, our entire community has done such a fantastic job in the positive messaging about the yes, we are clean, we're safe to travel through. So now we all know that vaccine information is out there. There are a couple of companies that have said that they're very confident about the vaccine. Today, UK gave the first vaccine to non-clinical trial patients. So that's a good news. That's a ray of hope. We want to cling on to that and climb out of it. So in 2021, we know that leisure traffic is potentially going to return, at least if not fully, partially. Vaccine could be available to the masses, which is of course going to improve the travel sentiment. And then of course, our idea is to focus on not only retention, which means the markets that we already have, but also expansion. These are some of the seasonal markets. These are some of the markets we lost during COVID. So our focus is to bring those back or increase capacity. And by 2021, we believe that if things continue like this, things improve, our passenger numbers are going to be 3.5 million. Keep in mind, these numbers are two-way traffic. Fast forwarded to 2022, we know the leisure traffic is going to return. There's a lot of pent up demand. We're going to see some this coming summer. And then, of course, in 2022, the industry believes that the leisure traffic is going to return to 2019 levels. But Reno Tahoe is not just leisure market. We're leisure and business. Talking to Edon, Edon believes that this is a very conservative number that we have put on the slide for 4 million in 2022 for what they are seeing in terms of the movement that's happening in the Reno Tahoe region, the companies that are moving in or are interested, and associated to that, the residential growth, the population growth. Um, uh, Mike thinks that 2022 we're going to be higher than 4 million, but it's a good story. We did talk to Nevada Builders Alliance, and they are seeing a lot of movement, a lot of permits for residential properties, and later in the presentation we'll talk about where those hot spots are. And in addition to that, there's a lot of industry growth that's happening in the Reno Tahoe region. Honestly, we're very lucky in terms of the product that we have to offer. Airlines are taking note of that. In addition to the population, there's the outdoors component. Airlines are looking at it right now. So we do see additional capacity going in the marketplace as we speak. So fast forwarded to 2023. That is where we say partial business traffic return. What is the business traffic? It's those folks that haven't traveled in 2019, that have taken budget cuts for 2020, the travel freezes, and of course, there's a big component that is somehow associated to leisure, is your group traffic that comes to our casino properties for meetings and events. So the conventions, events that have been delayed for the last 8 or 9 months, though that is something we're going to start seeing coming back. So overall, good story. Around that time, we're also going to look at the markets that have the pre-clearance capabilities in Canadian markets for international traffic. That is also something that we're going to look at, because right now the CBP facilities that we have, they're restricted to 200 passengers an hour, and there's some restrictions on the business hours of those services. So talk about 2024. Now we're exceeding the 2019 levels. So back in 2019, we were 4.5. In 2023, we're projecting 4.5 million. And up until this point, we're very much in line with what the industry experts are saying, that how the passenger traffic is going to return. One can argue that beyond this point, it could be a little more aggressive. But at the same time, for what we are hearing from our community partners, from our business entities in the region, I think this aggressive goal is potentially achievable if we're able to solve some of the issues that might come in the marketplace. So CONRAC is another option. In 2024, we expect CONRAC to be completed or close to that. That is going to give us additional capacity for the folks that are, of course, parking garage is another thing that people who are living in Reno Tahoe region, point of origin Reno, continues to grow. We're going to see this help the passenger traffic. Again, we want to keep in mind that our assumptions are always there. We're assuming good economy. We're assuming that the population continues to grow at the same rate as it's been growing over the last 3 or 4 years. And then, of course, EDON and other entities that continue to bring in those high-paying jobs, and the population growth happens at the same time. 2025, that is when we talk about, okay, 6 million mark. When was the last time we were at 6 million mark? Keep in mind, 2005, 6, 7, that is the period we were at about 5.2, 5.3 at some point. And then pre 9/11, during Reno Air Days, we were at 7 million mark. I do have a 7 million mark up there. It is a good goal to have. It's a long-term goal, but keep in mind, this slide is probably going to be a living document. And as we see things change in the marketplace, we're going to continue to tweak it a bit. One can argue, okay, what about the facilities that you currently have? You need an upgrade. There's a master plan in place. How were we able to manage 7.2 million passengers back in 98? Those were Reno Air Days. And back then, Reno Air was connecting a lot of passengers through Reno Tahoe International. Right now, we have less than 1% of passengers that connect through the airport. In other words, we are 99, almost 100% O&D traffic, which means either we're originating from here or our end destination is here. So those are some of the things that have changed significantly over time. Another thing later in the presentation, I'll talk about Reno point of origin. With the population growth and the diversification of economy here, we have seen Reno point of origin traffic grow significantly over the last 10 years. 10 years ago, we were about 35% of the entire traffic living in Reno Tahoe region. Now we have more than 45%. So those are some of the things that we're changing. We're seeing our traffic mix evolve. So our air service team worked together, worked with some of the community partners, worked with airline partners, and try to figure out, okay, how do we do our strategic plan for 2021? So historically, we had a document, we've had all the details, but now we have something very simple, straightforward, to the point, and we have 3 different types of markets that we're calling. One is retain, which is retention markets. These are the markets that we currently have at least at 5 times a week service. So, and the second one that I'll talk about is expansion category, and then the other one is attraction. But let's talk about retain, and coming to the topic on air service incentives. In retention markets, if you look at Denver, Oakland, Houston Intercontinental, Dallas Love Field, all these markets were given incentives, and airlines do not enter a new marketplace if they don't feel they're going to be successful in the long run. However, they do need some help in the beginning. They do need some risk mitigation, some sort of risk mitigation in the beginning. So long story short, moving on to expand markets. Now, expand category is either seasonal markets or are the ones that we lost during the pandemic. San Jose and Minneapolis are the ones that we did lose during this time period. It was a profitability factor and then the COVID factor as well. So we're working with those 2 airlines, several airlines with those 2 markets to see when they can reintroduce these in the marketplace. Talking about incentives, we all know what it took to get JFK. It took a village and some. That introduced JetBlue in the Reno Tahoe marketplace. And shortly after they introduced Long Beach, that was a win-win situation for everybody. But JFK was the one that was a linchpin that brought the entire community together from Lake Tahoe to the Valley, sitting on one table, focusing on one goal to bring in JFK service. So that is another one that received incentives. Atlanta, world's largest airport. Once you get there, you can get anywhere in the United States. So that was another place that we provided incentives. And then Orange County, Burbank, so on and so forth. But the value of incentives for airlines, again, I'm going to reiterate that. It's very, very important. I'd say more important than ever. And how quickly our strategic plan is changing and evolving. So initially, we presented to Darren and the leadership team a month and a half back. And since then, we have revised some of these markets, some of the targets 3 or 4 times. And on January 4th, we're going to revise it again because Minneapolis, which is highlighted pink here, is going to become an attract category because it's going to be out of the service for the entire 12-month period. And it would also qualify for incentives. So under the attract category, we have all unserved markets. We have primary targets, tertiary, secondary, tertiary, and then of course the international, which we're not talking about today. So if you look at on the map, here you can see that we have very few short haul markets as low-hanging fruits for us. Long Beach, Ontario maybe, and then the medium hauls like Austin, Houston, Hobby, San Antonio. If you remember, beginning of the pandemic, airlines, they regionalized their network, meaning that they were doing short hauls and very few medium hauls, and almost eliminated or suspended all of their long haul flying, especially transatlantic and international. And those are some of the things that airlines are starting to explore now. Okay, let's get back into the marketplace. Let's explore the medium hauls. So we do believe that for us, on the lower hanging fruit side, we have Long Beach, which we are working very, very hard with our partner to get as a daily year-round service. And then of course, Austin, Houston, Hobby, San Antonio, those are some of the markets that we do believe that they're just in that range, in the profitability range of airlines that we're working with. You do see Elko on top over there. It's a very challenging market. Most of you already know that we have applied for federal grants in the past to to acquire that marketplace, but we're trying to figure out what is the best airline to work with. Because right now, airlines do want to get in the marketplace, they do want to make money, but at the same time, they want to see if demand is there or not. So we're working with Elko Airport, trying to explore what is the best way to apply for another grant that is out there. It's called SCASD grant, Small Community Air Service Development Grant, and we do qualify to apply for it, even though we're the #2 airport on the list when it comes to small airport category. So let's plot everything on the map now. Now you're looking at 39 nonstop destinations, even a line to Hawaii too, which we all want. So that include our retention markets, expansion markets, attraction markets, and that's just the primary attraction markets, and doesn't even include the international category, which we have Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, and so on and so forth. So think about that. If we're going to hit that 6 million mark, 7 million mark, our route map should look like this in the long term. It's giving me kind of like a chill in my spine, but it's achievable if you think about it in the long term, if all the assumptions that we mentioned, good economy, population growth, diversification of economy, and every single thing that we talked about, if we achieve it, including infrastructures, we could potentially achieve that. And how we're going to do that? Of course, incentives is one. Give it a minute. So this is the regional development pipeline of Reno Tahoe area, or I should say just Reno Sparks area. Tahoe is not included in it. These are the bubbles that you see in 3 different colors, green, blue, and red. These are the residential areas. The green ones are active developments. The blue ones are approved developments and the red ones are proposed developments. And this is just the population side of things. And then let's move to the right side of that slide. You can see the Tri-Center where Tesla and Switch are located and blockchains are located. Now just look at just a little bit of east of that. We do have Northern Nevada Industrial Center colored in green. And then of course, Tri-Center 2, which is a proposed Lyon County project. And then up north, we do have Pyramid Lake. Look at all the growth that is happening. So population is growing on its own. Yes, of course it is. A lot of folks are moving in town. We're talking to airline partners. Hey, why are you seeing Reno Tahoe? Because a lot of people are working from home, having their second homes in the Reno Tahoe region. We do see that a lot of people are moving here. And then, of course, they're going to travel. They're going to take business trips. They're going to take leisure trips. So we're in a very different dynamic. We're in a very different stage of air service development here. And we need all the tools that we can get in order to do our jobs. And this, what you see over here, is one of the tools. Our airlines want to see that. Our airlines want to see what's happening in the Reno Tahoe region. And of course, we're competing with 450 airports. So talking about different tools, I'm going to hand this over to Trish. This is something that airlines also want to look at. We all have different data sources that we look at when we talk about travel sentiment, and we all do it at some level. But let's focus on the Reno Tahoe region. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Trish to walk you through what this is, and then she's going to talk through the incentives and the changes that we're proposing. Trish.
Thank you, Hassan. So yes, tools in the toolbox that we need. So how can we deliver on that very colorful map that Hassan just showed us with retain, expand, and attract? And one of the tools that we've just put in our toolbox is a travel sentiment survey. This survey was pushed out on November 18th, and it will close on December 21st. It was actually pushed out to 35,000 emails. That's between the airport's database and with the help of our partners at the Chamber, Northern Nevada Development Association, EDON, the Commercial Real Estate Development Association, and Builders Association of Northern Nevada. So we have a lot of help from our friends, if you will, to get this out. And it can also be found on the airport's website. And thus far, between November 18th and December 3rd, we've almost had 1,000 respondents to the survey. So that has given us significant data. So we're super excited to see what we have at the end after December 21st. And I believe we have plans to take that information to the board either in January or February. So you'll get to see what we found out. But this is the information the airlines can't get on their own. They can't Google. They've got national surveys out there, and we'll see how we compare to that. But besides the things that we can get from UNR and the slide that Hassan just showed, and this all gives us a leg up when we go to talk to the airline. But these are not the only pieces of the puzzle that will help us with the airline growth. The other pieces will be the adjustment to our incentive policy that we're going to talk about momentarily, and the addition of the marketing incentive funds to the fiscal year 2021 budget. So let's get into that a bit here. So in regards to the airline incentive policy, it was first introduced in May of 2001, and since then the policy has gone through various updates. The last time the policy was updated, you may remember, was in January of this year with resolution number 544. And at that time, our primary focus was to allow public charters to be eligible for incentives, public charters such as JSF, who has recently come on board here at Reno Tahoe International. The policy's evolution has been really brought on by airline industry changes and our effort to adapt to those changes. Our goal always being to, in offering the incentives to entice airlines to serve the Reno Tahoe community and to allow us to be competitive with other airports, especially the Sacramento airport and the Bay Area airport over the hill. However, in this new normal, I guess you could say, of air service development, we have the added goals of trying to enhance the speed of our air service recovery from COVID-19 crisis, and all while we keep in mind that we want to ensure the authority's financial viability. So the next slide is the existing policy, and there's nothing new that we've added to this policy in regards to the conditions of what qualifies an airline for incentives. It's just a reminder that incentives can be given for seasonal service, service offered by a new passenger airline, a new public charter, or a new dedicated cargo carrier. It can be given for service to a new destination, and we do have the targeted destinations Hassan was just speaking to, and the incentives can be cumulative. So just things to keep in mind as we talk about the policy a little bit more. For the next slide, staff only recommends 2 minor changes to the policy. However, these minor changes will make a major difference in supporting the airlines through these unprecedented times and risks, all while once again ensuring the financial viability of Reno Tahoe Airport Authority. So the 2 amendments are: 1, clarify the requirements regarding the air service incentive application, and 2, to clarify the limitations of the incentive funding. So on the first one, air service incentive application, the purpose of this amendment is to shorten the time frame from an airline to apply for incentives within 30 days versus the current 60 days. So by shortening the application timeline and adding the stipulation that failing to apply within that time frame will waive their rights to those incentives, staff will know fairly quickly if there's funding available for the next airline who offers an incentive eligible flight. Recently, we've had things happen fairly quickly around here, and which is great news, a great problem to have. But knowing what funding is available, shortening those timeframes once again will help us figure that out and allocation of that. So by doing this, we can better manage the incentive funding. And especially for next year, post-vaccine and post-runway reconstruction, we'll be in a better position to focus on acquiring those long-haul nonstop flights that Hassan was showing earlier in our presentation. Our second request in changing of the policy is the limitations of incentive funding. So in an effort to protect the RTAA fiscally, this amendment calls out that the airline incentive funds are finite, and as such, they will be awarded on a first-come, first-served basis, may expire anytime during the fiscal year. However, once approved, the incentives are guaranteed, even if the period of disbursement extends into a new fiscal year. And we've never put a definitive end to or finite amount on what our incentives are from year to year. We haven't worried about that so much. Once again, good problem to have. But as the airlines really need these incentives, we also want to make sure that we're helping them, but protecting ourselves. So we'll talk to this more in detail and give background as to why staff is recommending this change in the next couple of slides here. So fiscal impact. This table shows the money that's encumbered, pending, and anticipated future needs here. So talk through a couple of these under encumbered. We have the JSX Burbank flight that started in September, and our obligation with the current incentive policy was $70,000 in marketing funds. This is all about the marketing funds that we offer in the incentive program. And then Alaska Palm Springs, that's starting up. Our policy allowed them to have $50,000 in marketing funds. So what's encumbered thus far is $120,000 in marketing funding for our two air carriers. And then in the pending category, JSX, as you know, started their Orange County service at the beginning of this month. Very exciting. And should they decide to take advantage of those funds, they are eligible for $45,000 in funding. And then we are working, as Hassan said, on Long Beach. We might have something to share with you come Thursday. Just a little teaser there. So we are very optimistic we'll have something to share on Thursday. But when that comes to fruition, I won't say if, then there will be $50,000 in marketing funds eligible to that particular airline. So now we've got $120,000 encumbered, $95,000 pending. And then in the potential airlines and destination, what we kind of see in the future before the end of this fiscal year, Hassan was talking about markets that are becoming eligible because they haven't been served for 12 months. And we're working very hard to get some of those back. We have had some conversations with airlines about the potentials there. So we wanted to make sure that there is funding available should that happen. And even if the air carrier decides to bring this in the summer, these particular markets, we like to try and market ahead of the start of that flight. And so the marketing could potentially start in this current fiscal year. So all of that said, when you add everything up between the encumbered, pending, and estimated future, we're sitting at a grand total of $315,000 in marketing incentive funds. So with the currently submitted incentive application and the anticipated ones, we believe that what is required in fiscal year 2021 will exceed the approved budget by $200,000. The good news is that there are additional funds available in our fuel tax account, which is used to help with fund these incentives, but will require a budget augmentation to do that. So when we talk about the fuel tax fund, a little bit of an overview here. The fuel tax account is made up of money we get back from the state on the sale of jet fuel as per NRS. And at the beginning of fiscal year 2021, there was a total of $650,000 in an available fuel tax fund. Unfortunately, although we continue to collect fuel tax funds, due to the pandemic, it's not being replenished quite as quickly as it had been in the past. So we're anticipating collecting about $140,000 in this fiscal year to add to that $650,000. So with the current budget, and if approved, an additional $200,000 in airline incentive funding, at the end of this fiscal year, we would still have $397,000 in the fuel tax fund going into next fiscal year. So I think that's setting us up very well for, as I had mentioned previously, trying to work on acquiring some of those long haul flights, get some of those back. A couple of important notes to share regarding the fuel tax fund is that we only pull funds from this account when we have a qualifying bill to pay. So if we don't use the budgeted amount by the end of the fiscal year, the money remains in the fuel tax account as a source of funding to be used at a later date. And then currently the only department that uses this funding source is Air Service Development. So moving on to the budget that we had for air service in the fuel tax section for fiscal year 2021. As you are all aware, staff submits a budget specific to fuel tax usage every year that is intended to cover anticipated airline incentives, but it also is intended to cover some additional advertising and marketing costs that are fuel tax eligible. So there are a couple of other things besides just airline incentives that are in this particular fund. And for fiscal year 2021, due to the COVID budget restrictions, the final approved fuel tax budget was $193,000. So even with savings realized, we can find some savings within the non-airline incentive fund category of this budget. We've anticipated that there will still be a need for 200,000 in funding to handle the airline incentives that we see coming and that are already here. Once again, it's a great problem to have. It means that the airlines see Reno as a viable market during a pandemic. And once again, the good news is the funding is available through the fuel tax account fund. So that being said, staff recommends that the board adopt resolution number 548, amending resolution number 544, a resolution adopting an update to policy number 600-007 on the financial incentives for airline and dedicated cargo carriers, and amending the current budget to add $200,000 in fuel tax funds for the purpose of expansion and or attraction of air service at the Reno Tahoe International Airport. And with that, I would like to offer it up to Tina Iftiger, if you have anything to add, or Mr. Griffin on this particular motion.
Looks like CEO Griffin might want to say anything, but as you can see, we're preparing for the recovery and moving forward. But CEO Griffin, I think I saw you wanting to say something earlier on.
Hey, can I interrupt real quick, guys? I'm going to switch over to, wait. Hey, can I interrupt real quick, guys? I'm going to switch over to phone so you won't see me on video.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Chair Rose. Great presentation, a lot of information. We buried you a little bit there. Sorry about that, but I think it's really important that the board see our long-term vision for what is possible here, and it starts with the forecast. So Hassan took you through a very aspirational forecast. I confess, I have been instrumental in putting something out there that the FAA certainly wouldn't agree with, but I think we know our market far better than the FAA does. There's a ton of exciting growth happening here in Northern Nevada. We're trying to wrap our brain around it and understand what is our role as the airport in preparing for it. Our catchment area is getting bigger. It's way beyond just Reno and Sparks. And when you see what's happening in some of those other markets, it's really astonishing that the growth is accelerating because of the pandemic. That is not something that could have been predicted. So I've given them mission impossible to forecast the next 5 to 6 years. There's numbers out there that, who knows if we actually get there or not. And maybe we're too conservative in the next 2 or 3 years. We feel our recovery is going to come strong. But the reality of it is, if we're even close to any of that, the conversations we're about to have with you about infrastructure are based on how many people we think we're going to be processing. This forecast, our air service roadmap, our incentive policies lays all the groundwork for that. So that's the purpose of this. It's about a much bigger picture than the $200,000 we're asking for here, but that is really important. We're competing nationally now for air carriers that have all gotten smaller. And I mean, we're in the depths of the pandemic right now. It's never been worse for the air carriers than it is today. And our numbers are really bad today, but it's important we think futuristic, post-pandemic, think 5 years from now. And that is what we've tried to paint for you. So open it up for your questions or anything that Tina would like to add, but appreciate your time on this one.
Thank you, Darren. Tina, did you want to add anything?
I think they covered it very well. We are collaborating with UNR to try to assess all of the catchment area growth. You saw the first exhibit that's on their shelf. They're creating custom documents for us. And the survey that Trish talked about is going to be key for explaining what's happening in our market. We have had, we already have statistical significance. We have 95% confidence in the findings, and we're hoping we'll have a full report for the board in the next month or so. But this will help us baseline and forecast the future, because all of the airlines look at historical data. That growth chart and those surveys will give them current and future predicting data, and that's unique to this market, plus the incentives and the model we have with the Regional Air Service Corporation. we are in a very competitive position, particularly with our outdoors and our non-urban settings. So we're very bullish in the long term. I hope that shows.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. It was great to get such a detailed update, and I really appreciate it. Do any of the committee members have any questions? Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that I really appreciate that you're looking beyond the pandemic and getting yourselves prepared for hopefully the ultimate days when we're back to something semi-normal. And it appears that you've done a lot of work to get us in a place where hopefully we're ahead of some of the other folks out there that are vying for the same business. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other comments or questions?
This is Nat. No comments or questions, but I move to approve.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any further discussion?
Great job, Assam and Trish.
It was a really
Good
good
job.
presentation. Thank you very much. So we'll go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Trustee Jay?
He must be having the same problems I was with my audio and
Okay.
video.
There
Can
he
you
is.
guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, what? I vote yes. Is that what you need?
That's what I need.
Okay,
Any
yes, I'm all
opposed?
improved. Great job, everybody.
Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. That will bring us to item number 3 on the agenda, which is items for discussion and possible action, and we have none of those today. So we'll move right on to number 4, which is member comments, questions, and request for future agenda items. Is there... That's interesting. Is there any items that anyone would like to see in the future? Comments? Nope. Okay, hearing none. Number 5 is the monthly administrative reports, and that's 5.1 through 5.5. Of course, the budget update will happen at the Thursday board meeting so that all board members can hear that. But are there any other items between 5.1 and 5.5 that anyone would like to discuss, or that you have any questions regarding? Well, you guys are good. All right, that leaves us with our public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We have no public comments.
Thank you very much. And that takes us to adjournment. The Planning Commission committee meeting will be following here at 10 o'clock in about 10 minutes if you're planning to attend. Otherwise, thank you all very much. I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving, and I'll see you all on Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.